first one I'd like to recommend is the Orbea Rice, available for $7,000 to $11,000 depending on spec. And this is a 29er using a special version of the Shimano EP8 motor. And what really makes it compelling is they kind of defined their product with a more limited, lightweight, more limited power, lightweight e-mountain bike. And so what you have is about a 37 to 38 pound bike in top spec, very configurable on their website. And so you address the most common concern against e-bikes, which is they're too heavy. A lot of them are 48 to 52 pounds, 38 pounds, and this one rides pretty light. It's pretty darn good. So with the less power of 60 Newton meters, I'm not sure if that means anything to you, they're able to give you the range, 3,000 to 4,000 foot climbing range that most people need. And if you want a longer adventure, they give you a pretty good extender battery that you put in the water bottle mount. So not bad, huh? On the downside, this is probably the hardest to get of all these bikes. It's a very long waiting list. Number 2 I'd like to recommend is the Specialized Gen 3 Levo. Generation 3, the third full iteration of the Levo. It is now, they focused on riding characteristic. So the suspension kinematics make sure the weight of the bike is supported. It's long and slack, of course, but it feels lighter than it is. So it's a 48 pound bike in top spec, and really it is unbelievable. It has big suspension, big brakes, and it changes direction like no other. It feels so natural. It's really even worlds apart from its previous generation, the Gen 2 Levo. This one is $11,000 to $15,000. That is the downside. Very expensive, hard to get, and they have a couple older versions. When you go on their website, $5,000 and $7,000. Don't go for those. Those are the old ones. That's a Gen 2, so it's a little bit confusing. But the Gen 3 is really worlds apart from any other bike, and even from their old bikes. Number 3 I'd like to talk about is the Canyon Spectral On. This one is a very compelling bike, probably my favorite, because when you consider the price, $6,300 to $9,000 is actually a lot cheaper than the rest. And what they did special is it's Shimano EP8 powered, very smooth, very natural power plant with a 630 watt-hour battery, all Shimano components. I don't know how they're able to get Shimano, it's hard. So the best shifting and the best 4-piston braking available. And what they have is a mullet wheel size, so smaller in the rear than the front. So they've made it agile and easy to maneuver. On the downside, very hard to get, of course, and the suspension is not quite as supportive as I want. The geometry is not, the seat angle and whatnot is not quite as modern. So if you are into the new style of geometry, the Canyon Spectral On is waiting for kind of the next revision. Next bike I'd like to talk about is the Trek Rail, the bike I see most often. $5,300 to $13,000, and it's got the powerful Bosch Gen 4 motor. So good, this motor, so capable. So available at attainable price points, so somewhere in the middle, about $7,000. It's gonna be a really good bike with good brakes and good suspension. You don't need to spend the top spec on e-bikes. You're just saving a couple pounds, and that's not usually compelling in an e-bike. And what makes this special is it's got 29er wheels, good for eating up terrain. So if you have rough terrain, Lake Tahoe, Downeyville, and whatnot, this is a good machine that will just truck through the roughest terrain. So that's the Trek Rail, and it's got the support of Bosch, support of Trek, and their whole dealership. On the downside, it's not as easy to turn as some of these other bikes, And you know, the Bosch motor, as good as it is, it's got a little bit of a rattle, so it's not the most quiet, calm bike. Next bike I'd like to talk about is the surprise revelation of the year, the Santa Cruz Bullet. I don't know if you saw my review on the Santa Cruz Hector. It wasn't amazing, but I felt it was a key step for them to get their foot in the door, understand what people want in the Bullet. And in the Bullet, you have the mullet wheel size, which makes it fast and nimble. And they put a suspension that is supportive, you know, a little rearward travel path, and not too much pedal platform. You don't need that as much on an e-bike. You have a motor assisting you. What you want is suppleness at the top, but support, mid-stroke support. And this is the most modern geometry, slack and steep seat angles, long reach. So an amazing beast. On the downside, it has the rattle of the EP8 motor for sure. It's in short supply, but worse, the colors are not that good. They have a root beer, which everyone wants, and they have a lilac color, which a lot of my friends have been forced to get. Not a good color. Next bike I'd like to recommend is the Yeti Decoy. This one is still compelling. It's a little bit long in the tooth, ready for an upgrade, and it's hard to get. Shimano EP8 motor now available from $6,000 to $8,000, so the price has gone up, but it's still, you know, when you look at the spec and what you're getting, still a world beater. You know, it's available in 29er or mullet. I would definitely go for a mullet on this bike, unless you are racing and need to get down the hill in the fastest way possible. But it always has one of the most compelling specs available. A lot of Shimano components. Next bike is the Commencal Metapower. This one is 5600 to 8200, and what you'll notice is once you hit the 5000 mark, people's eyes perk up, but then the bike becomes very hard to get. So this one has a very active suspension, very compelling bike for the money. A lot of good components, coil, and you have so many options. You know, the downside is they try to stick with a 27.5 front and rear wheels. It would be nice to have a mullet, and made for it. Very hard to get, and you know, the seat tube is pretty short. It's very heavy, usually 55 pounds, and the seat tube is a little short, so you can't have the longest dropper posts that you're used to. Next bike is the Norco VLT 6700 to $12,700, and they've really upped the capability of this bike. Their battery range is unreal. You know, they have the normal Shimano battery, but you have an extender battery that puts it way up there, way beyond the rest. The bike weight goes up quite a bit, but it's good to have a modular system where you can do either or. Rounding out the last two, the ninth one is the Yeti 160E, the first effort by Yeti, 10,100 to 12,700. Very expensive, very hard to get. They're gonna have a hard time keeping up with demand. But what's special about this bike is it looks amazing, and they have a new version of their Infinity suspension that keeps it supportive at all levels, active in the beginning, supportive in the middle, and at the end, but adjustable as well. So Yeti, I don't know how they did it. I haven't ridden. This is the one bike I have not ridden, but everyone's saying wow, for a first effort, they really nailed it. The last one I'll talk about that I recommend is the Kinivo SL, the Specialized Kinivo SL. It is basically a Specialized Enduro, one of the best all-mountain bikes of all time. Instead of creating a 55-pound bike, which is what this chassis would have entailed, they put a small motor, small battery in it to make it a 40-pound bike. So what you have is kind of the best of both worlds. If you are a traditional mountain bike rider just looking for a little help, and you want the best ride quality possible. So what that's really opened up is just address a lot of people's concerns that they're too heavy, they're too hard to jump and turn, and I want the best ride quality possible. on the corners and the downhills. On the downside, it's got a dinky little motor that makes a lot of noise. So you need a lot of, luckily they have these range extenders, so you could have your long rides, keep up with your buddies. But that's the big issue, is once you have a lot of friends riding buddies with full powered mountain bikes, there's no way you can keep up unless you are just twice as fit as them. And also very expensive, $9,000 to $15,000 in the current iteration.